Good evening, and welcome to another episode of Late Night Table Talk. My name's Eric Yurko. I'm going to be your host this evening, and since we're approaching midnight in Reykjavik, it seems like it's probably as good a time as any to get started. Joining me tonight is Eric Buscemi from the cardboard Hoard. Really looking forward to talking to him, but before we get there are, as always, a few things I'd like to talk to you all about. So first off, I want to thank you all again for watching Late Night Table Talk. As I've said, and probably will say again, we're in kind of the pre-season for the show, so I'm still figuring out what works, what I like, what I don't like, and things about the format that I may want to change. If there are things you'd particularly like to see, or people you'd particularly like to hear me talk to, please feel free to let me know in the comments, and we'll see what we can do. So, tonight's topic, I actually spent a fair amount of time thinking about, as opposed to the others, which I guess I came up with off the cuff. But anyway, I want to talk a little bit more about solo games. So I've been doing a fair bit of solo gaming, given the fact that I still can't leave my house. So love that for me, as I've said in the past. But in lieu of that, there have been a lot of opportunities for playing different games by myself. The best way to play board games. Not to besmirch solo gamers. Lots of fun solo games. Just, I do like playing games with my friends. So, as you can see from behind me, there are a number of great titles that also support solo play. I'm going to talk a bit about those. I'm going to talk a bit about other ones that I've been playing and really liking, and then we will talk to Eric. So, as I mentioned, behind me there are a number of titles that are mostly multiplayer, but they also support solo play. Generally speaking, there is a good variety of games that try to have solo variants included, so that players who are just learning the game, they're prepping to teach other people, or they just like playing games by themselves, can learn the game, learn the rules, and experience the game before they need to show it to other people, or maybe they never show it to other people at all. Again, there's a huge culture of solo play already. So, what defines good solo play, I think, is generally debated among a few people. So there are things I generally don't like. So for instance, you can play a board game, you'll get some points, and then the game will say, hey, you should try to beat your highest score next time. I'm not as big of a fan of that because it means that I don't really feel like I'm progressing against something. I'm just trying to outplay myself every time. There's a step above that, which is essentially they'll give you tiers, and you'll earn certain score tiers or earn certain title tiers based on how well you do on certain games. That's fun, but I honestly really prefer it if they have something like an AI or a score tier to beat that determines whether or not I win or lose. So really, the key there is, it's not that I love losing games. I mean, there aren't many people who can say that they do, but I like the threat of losing, or the potential that I might lose. So, for instance, Burgle Bros can be played solo because it's a cooperative game where you can just play as multiple characters, but there isn't really a scoring criteria to it. You either win by escaping or you lose by not escaping. Railroad Inc., on the other hand, even though I do love it as a multiplayer game and quite enjoy it as a solo game, it is kind of just, you play it, you beat your high score, you move on. There are a number of other solo titles that I think have been doing really well in the space lately, and I'm pretty excited for them, so I'll go through and talk about a few of them really fast. So one person that's been doing a lot of work in the solo game space is Carla over at Weird Draft Games, so Degrees in Darkness, and pretty much every game that she publishes has some level of a solo mode due to an AI that she's been working on for that game or other games. I think that's a really cool thing to add because it adds a lot of draw for people who do enjoy the solo titles, and it gives you a way to, as I mentioned earlier, learn the rules and learn the gameplay before you need to actually teach it to other people. So for many games, actually, I will play it solo first to get a good sense of the rules, and then I'll show it to other folks. The wallet game space is also pretty solo game dense. So one of my favorite titles in that space is Sprawlopolis from Button Shy. Quick city building game, 18 cards. You've got essentially 4 quadrants per card. You're trying to build out a city to meet some scoring criteria. The nice thing about that is that instead of having scoring tiers where you score certain points, you have a score composite, essentially, that's assembled from the 3 scoring cards you use. And you have to beat that score composite in order to win. I find that really interesting. There are also other titles that support solo play, like Circle the Wagons, or specifically solo games like Pentaquark, or their recent title, Food Chain Island. So they're doing, I believe, a simply solo series of games, and Food Chain Island is one of them. Had a blast playing it. Honestly, I really love what Button Shy is doing in the space, just because the games are so easy to transport. That, for instance, between the 4 of these games, right, we're talking something that's maybe 2 cell phones wide. This can probably still fit in my pocket, and I've got a 4-player game, 2-player game, and 2 solo games. Just handy. Really love that. But Button Shy is not the only player in the wallet game space. Lettyman Games has also been doing a fair bit there with their Squire for Hire series. Also supports solo play. And I believe Concrete Canoe also has some wallet games coming out in that vein as well. What I generally like about solo games is the puzzle aspect. So the more puzzly it is, the more excited I am about getting to like dig in, try to figure it out, see how I can do. What I generally don't love as much about solo games is when they get too focused on the scoring aspect of it and they try too hard to just be a high score game or a see how many points you can get and see how it turns out. If I want to compete in a points-based game, I'll generally look towards other players for that competition, you know? I won't necessarily go against a number that got written down in the book. It's not to say that they aren't exciting, it's just a personal preference on that front. But yeah, I've been playing a lot more of them, just because in order to get a bunch of reviews done, you often have to play games by yourself. So those aren't quite solo games. What they are is they're more of a simulated multiplayer game. So what I'll do is I'll play as myself, but I'll play 3 people playing around the table, and my memory is so anyways, so it's very easy for me to forget what cards are in my hand between my various turns, and that gives me a pretty good sense of how the game is played at higher player counts, even when you can't necessarily play with other people. So one main problem with reviewing now is that if you're reviewing games that are mostly new, there aren't as many online versions of those games easily available, so it's hard to find players when you still can't leave. But making it work, seeing what we can do in the solo space, and I'm really excited about a bunch of companies who are paying more attention to solo gaming than they used to, as I expect a lot more people are looking for solo games if they are isolated or cut off from their traditional gaming groups. But yeah, I'd love y'all's take. Are there any solo games that you enjoy? Any thoughts on the idea of scoring in a solo game, or your favorite end game points in a solo game? If so, or if you have anything else you think on the solo gaming space, pop into the comments. Let me know what you think, and I'd love to respond to pretty much whatever you have to talk about in that space. But yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff happening in solo gaming, and I can't wait to see where it goes. So let's bring on our guest tonight, Eric Buscemi. Eric is one of the co-founders of the Punchboard Media Network, a media network that I'm also a member of, and when he's not doing that, he also writes for the Cardboard Hoard, a written review site, so you can kind of see why him and I get along so well. The Eric thing, the written review thing, the Punchboard Media thing. We've been working together for a few years, and when he's not doing any of those things with all of his free time, he also works on a podcast called Patrick and Eric in the Morning, along with Patrick Hillier. Great guy, great friend of the show. Again, insofar as anyone could be a friend of the show when the show isn't technically launched yet, but yeah, no. Super excited to have him on the show. Please join me in welcoming Eric Buscemi to Late Night Table Talk. Hey, Eric. Thanks so much for joining me tonight. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, I just wanted to sort of catch up, see how things are going, what you've been up to pretty quickly. So, what's new?
Not too much. Kids are back in school, so that's a
Are they
thing
remote or are
now.
they in person?
Both.
Ah,
They're doing partial 2 days on, 3 days virtual. It's a headache.
I
But
imagine.
after 6 months stuck here, it's you know, a
It's probably nice to be
return.
able to get out and like see their friends again.
Yeah, they're super psyched. I'm psyched to have some peace in the house while I'm trying to work. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I can't even imagine. Some of my coworkers have been really struggling over the summer, just like trying to provide for their kids, but also still working like 40 plus hours a week.
The struggle is real. But on a brighter, lighter note, I got a 3D printer because I had to cancel all my vacations for the year. I had some, you know, leftover money.
That is, yeah, I did something similar. I ordered a box of games from Japan with my like Gen Con purchase money. So I
Ooh,
got like 12 new Japanese board games in the mail.
That's
But
exciting.
yeah, it's super exciting. I'm looking forward to being able to play them once I can assemble a gaming group. Didn't think
And
about that part.
and learn Japanese.
I'd say 10 of them have English rules or a
Yeah,
translation.
there you
There's a
go.
solid one or two that I was like, oh, I probably should have asked for that. Like anything. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, yes, I cannot read this at all. But tell me about the 3D printer. So what you doing with it? Making anything cool?
You know, I've made some cool game components. I I have a old copy of Camel Up, the original edition, and there was this like case you could make, and like it plays eight Camel Up,
Mhm.
and it'll separate all the components for the eight players. So you'll get your three coins, you'll get your tile, and you'll get your deck of cards. So it'll make it really easy to play with a whole bunch of people and make just opening the box and getting going like that much quicker, which is cool for a game that plays eight. Which again, oh, who the hell knows if that'll ever happen again? But
Yeah, it's like
aspirational.
yeah, I think I got a few. I've been getting a few emails about reviews for games that like seat up to 6 or 8, and I was like, I can't. I don't. Who do people have? Has someone seen like 8 people that they know all at once in the last 6 months? Like, just kind of. I'm more
Yeah,
just like impressed by the thought of it. I'm like, oh wow, playing a board game with more than just me.
and the
Fascinating.
and the other thing I did was I got a game called Fumbling Ferrets, and it how many games do you get where the insert is almost great? You know, the plastic insert,
Oh, I've had a number of them. The ones
and
where
it's
like
just like, and there's like this,
everything almost fits, but as soon as you
yeah,
go inside, everything slides out.
or it's like the well just wasn't deep enough, and those top five cards slide all over and it's just like they were so close to me not needing to manufacture something for this. So close.
I feel like number nine is really on the money for that because like number nine's insert is great, but the best version of number nine that I've played is when you have 2 copies of number nine and you can double the player count. And Annette did this on Metters Plays. She sliced the insert in half
Oh,
because it's mostly dead space. And
okay.
if you slice the insert perfectly in half, there's just enough room to stack 2 number 9 copies on top of each other and shut the box.
Wow.
Yeah.
Getting back to that high player count.
Yeah, again, I'm like, oh yeah. What a weird sensation that must have been, like being like, oh, look at me and my 7 friends.
But yeah, so I printed out this insert for Fumbling Ferrets because I my buddy made the game, so I just he was kind of bummed. They're like, oh, you put all the chips in, and then the board doesn't sit right anymore, and it just doesn't work. And I'm like, we can fix this. We have the
Yeah,
technology.
that's an X-Acto knife problem as far as I'm aware. Does Gil know that a game called Fumbling Ferrets exists?
Gil play tested it when it was
That makes
originally
sense.
called something else because we're all tri-state area based.
Right.
So yeah, and Bicycles, the company that wound up making it,
Oh yeah,
they renamed it, and he's like, oh, Gil, I owe you an apology. And Gil took it, and he thought it was hysterical.
I'm sure.
So
Gil's
yeah,
Gil's a great dude.
and Gil has a word game too, and this is a word game. So
Oh,
it's
nice.
yeah, there's it's it's very confusing.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I'll have to check it out at some point. So I do always have to ask during this section. I hate when people ask me this question. I've never
Oh,
actually gotten to ask this question
all
in
right.
this particular way, so I'm very enthusiastic about it. So, what's Eric playing?
That's fair.
I think you're the only person
Actually,
who's ever laughed at that. So, like, that's also
well,
cool.
I what I've been playing most recently is something that I'm actually staring at in your picture, which is Cascadia.
Yes, that's
Now,
specifically why I added it to this collection of titles.
I have been fortunate enough to play it at two different conventions before all the lockdowns, and so I've actually seen it develop from Origins last year into PAX Unplugged last year into now the version that which is I mean they're saying it's it's still a prototype, but it's pretty good. The art is done, the component, yeah, it's there. If they do nothing else with it, it's chef's
Oh yeah,
kiss.
I can easily say this because my review of it's going to be published before this video is finalized, but I loved it. I thought it was just I thought it like it I remember it super well because I was playing it at two against myself. So I was playing two different versions of me and I was just kind of
Okay.
manipulating both sets of pieces. I was having a bad day. I was already in a very bad mood and I was like, well, let's just play something. And I remember playing it like fuming the whole time as I was muttering myself in pieces around, taking a deep breath after I finished playing it, and I was like, I think I loved this.
Yeah.
Like I was like,
And they've added solo rules since you've done that, so you could
ooh,
have actually just played without putting on a mustache and
I do like that sensation though, where I'm just like, who has blocked my turn? It's me across the table with a mustache being
evil
like,
Eric.
yeah, just a small, just stroking the goatee, being like, yes, you never saw this coming. Although I did, because I guess it would technically still be me. I don't know. It's a complicated metaphor.
But yeah, so Cascadia has been the one I've been playing. I'll say this now, even though there's no way, depending on how long I guess you hold this video, but there's almost no way this video will have not been released before. But I think it's going to be hard for Cascadia not to be in my top 10 games of next year.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
I'm
I mean, I'm currently struggling with it because I've been playing. I like as bad as lockdown has been for my gaming. I have also played some very good games while we haven't been able to leave. Like you played Intrepid, right?
I have not.
So it's definitely heavier than my
Okay.
normal, considering a game of it usually takes me 3-ish hours.
Oh, okay, that
But
is.
whew, well, I will always give long cooperative games a pass. So like Spirit Island, like all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I know Millennium Blades is a favorite of yours too. So
It is.
there
Yeah,
are some longer
I've
and
definitely
heavier things that
cultivated a
you like.
reputation of not liking heavy games, even though many of my favorite games are in fact decently heavy. I just like reviewing games more than I like playing heavy games.
I think I've cultivated that because most of the time I get to play, it's with my family or with a few close friends that like lighter games. So it's more like that's what I get to do often.
I did get to live my dream at BGG Con last year because I had a copy of Edge of Darkness. I don't know if you've seen the full box for that.
Yes, you
It's
could have roomed in it.
Yeah, I actually was I was going I offered to go pick up a new game for people to play and I managed to do exactly what I wanted. They had just finished their game. So when I literally slammed the box on the table and said, "What up, nerds? Let's play a board game." And it like shook the table. It was actually really satisfying. Like it
Wow.
does have yeah, it has some of that going for it. But yeah, no. Yeah, it's been tough to get stuff played, but we've been making it work. So that's been fun. It's been fun. Yeah, so let's move on to the next thing. So I've been
Shoot.
trying a new formatting things. We've started relatively new since I've really only done a few episodes, but it's a kind of improv game that I've called Game the Name, which is where
All
I'm gonna
right.
come up with a name of a game, and I'm not gonna stall or lengthen out the description so I can have time to come up with it, even though I clearly haven't thought of it yet.
Oh, good.
And we're going to maybe spend about 5-ish, 10-ish minutes trying to design what a game about that could be. Usually it's something that's more relevant to you because I feel like that gives me a little bit more space to work with. And I usually do guarantee that it will be either kind of fun or extremely bad. It could be something other than those two, but those are the two options that I'm offering. We'll keep it
Like
light.
the coin could land on its edge, but it's most likely hitting one of those two faces.
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah, okay. So the first thing that popped in my mind was a game. So let's you and me collaboratively design a game called Hoarders,
Oh, okay.
not
All
based on
right.
the TV show, but
Um, well, this has to be competitive, right off jump,
yeah, it
right?
seems reasonable. Yeah,
And we're talking player mats with a grid, right?
yeah, I
Because
think that makes sense.
you got to have some place to physically hoard stuff. And like every game has polyaminos now, right?
Hmm. Okay,
But these
let
should be 3D, right?
I was gonna yes and your polyominoes and say stackable polyominoes.
Well, that's yeah. There we go.
Yeah.
So
So get that 3D effect that you're looking for, but have it be essentially as you're like, because it's if you're hoarding stuff, right? You don't really care about the structural integrity of the piles. You're just kind of throwing stuff on piles, right?
now, is this a dexterity game now?
Ooh. So if the okay, so if they were polyominoes, they were odd shapes or maybe like odd weights, or even better, to go back to your 3D idea, they had different thicknesses. I'm kind of actually I'm into the idea. Let's call it a dexterity game of some kind. You also have to maintain the balance of your piles, which I think makes sense from like a ludonarrative standpoint because you don't want to come in and have like a pile of stuff fall on you, right?
Yeah, I mean that's game over, right?
Hmm. Okay. So that means then, what if you have a meeple that's moving around between various piles on your board? Sort of. Do you ever play? Oh, I'm gonna call it by the wrong name, and Jeff's gonna get mad at me. Was it the Grand Carnival?
Yes, I have, and I believe that's what it's called, isn't it?
Okay. Oh, oof. I think so. My brain keeps wanting to say the Great Carnival, but I'm like 95% sure it's the Grand Carnival. Anyway, you know how you have a meeple moving around between the various polyominoes that you've set down so you can put like tickets on them?
Yes.
That's kind of what I have in my brain for like you moving around to like balance things on these piles, is that you have a character who's like bringing things in and then stacking them on the piles. And if the pile ever falls over and hits your meeple, oh, they're done.
Now, I was thinking there
Okay.
would be like a biro in the middle that
Yeah.
it could represent the dump or dumpster diving or I don't know wherever hoarders flea markets or whatever,
Ooh, you could
and
actually have separate. You could have separate sections for it, so you
and
could
they
have
and they
like
would be
a
going between
dumpster,
these.
a flea market, and like I have $100 and Cool Stuff Inc. exists as a pile.
And then you could be fighting over like for the good junk with the other hoarders
Mhm.
to then bring it in.
No, I think
I
that's good. I think.
I think with some funny art,
Oh yeah, I think we can make this work.
this is not the worst 5 minute idea anyone's ever come up with.
Oh no, no, for sure. So what I'm thinking is let's build on that. So you've got things that are coming in from a flea market, things that are coming in from online shopping, and you've got the dump. What I would say is items that aren't picked by anybody after a certain number of rounds go to the dump because then they're just dumped, right? And if you want them, maybe you can take them for some penalty or like something because you shouldn't just let nice stuff go to the dump,
Yeah, no,
right?
you're hoarders. So like
Right.
at that point, like if you go to the dump, you just have to take everything there.
Ooh,
Even if there's stuff that really doesn't fit well and could topple your thing, but it's going to give you more points because the more you build, the more points you get, right?
I really like that though. So you're just letting stuff move from like flea markets to the internet to the dump, and then you're coming in with like a tractor trailer, and you're bringing it all to your little personal hoard.
And then I don't know if you score by set collection or just by sheer volume or by height. I don't know. I don't know.
It seems
Maybe
like
some combination of those things.
Yeah, it seems like what you could do is yeah something like that, but also maybe the game ends when one player's stack collapses on them.
Yeah, and so then yeah, that's kind of like that what is the name of that game? Yeah, it's the Cleopatra and the Society of Architects. You ever play that one?
Nope.
All right. So, super quickly, all the players are trying to build these architectural structures. This is an old, I think it's Days of Wonder, Bruno Cathala. It might not be Days of Wonder. It's definitely Bruno Cathala. They redid it recently, whatever. And you're doing all these architectural things, and you have to use these cards, and you're drawing these cards, and some of the cards let you do much better stuff, but you have to like, there's like these penalties that you have to drop a thing in this like hidden section that you have.
Ah,
I'm doing this terribly describing this,
no,
but
I
at
can kind of get it.
the end of the game, everyone reveals their hidden thing with all like the penalties they took, and whoever has the most is eaten by alligators and cannot win. So
That
you
seems reasonable.
basically, but they probably did the best because the
Right.
most penalties means they had the most good actions, which means they should have theoretically been able to build the most. So this is what I'm is like the same thing. It's like whoever built the highest thing, but then it collapsed. So then by nature the second best player is the
Mhm.
winner.
Yeah, I could go for this. I think this has got some legs. Yeah. So yeah, if you're working for a publisher and
You
this
want to
in
do all the
particular,
work.
yeah, you want to do literally everything. And then just slap a couple of Erics on the box, just I feel like, yeah, I've always been pleased because we've done this on a couple episodes of this so far, and we've always ended up with something that at least sounds fun. And they've just, like, some of these have just been out there to start. Because again, I'm really just going off of what is a word or phrase that pops in my brain right now. But yeah, man,
Yeah, it was a good one. That was
yeah,
good.
we'll see how it turns out. But yeah, so I wanted to dive in a little bit deeper with some more questions that I've got for you, since you're
Let's do it.
already here joining us. Excited to chat with you more. I do have to ask, I was doing some light research, and I did notice from my Googling and other perusals of the internet that you were a swimmer previously. So I used to swim a fair bit. Can you tell me more about your storied swim career?
I started swimming competitively in high school, and I had known how to swim, but I'd never swam competitively. But
Mhm.
some of my friends had done it, and I was like, "Oh, I'm a good swimmer. I like swimming." And then I joined the team, and I was like the worst swimmer there because they would all we were all on like the YMCA Dolphin team, and I was like, "Oh, I mean, I swam at Lake George." You know,
That's
I'm the
relatable.
best swimmer in my family, but that doesn't mean anything.
I wasn't even the best swimmer in my family.
but but I rapidly improved because when you're 13, 14 years old, like you take to something,
Right.
and you can you can improve quickly at it when you put your mind to it and when you practice a lot. We practiced mornings and after school and during school. Yeah, I always smelled like chlorine.
Oh yeah, I remember that well. Your
And
like
then
clothes, your hair are never really clean.
And then I went on and did it in college as well. And when I was in college, I picked up 1 meter diving as well.
Ah,
Just because, actually, we had this fundraiser where it was a 24-hour swimathon, and like so it's like a relay. So you're only
mhm,
swimming one out of every 40 people. So
right.
you really like you're not really swimming that much even over 24 hours. But it's so the other when the other 39 people are swimming, you have nothing to do, and you're in the pool, and you know what's there? A diving board.
Right.
So my buddy was the diver, and he's like, "Oh, I could teach you how to dive." And I was like, "Oh, I mean, I know how to dive." Again, like just like I knew how to swim, I was like, "Yeah, I
I
could
was
do
gonna say.
a front dive." And he's like, "No, now we're going to teach you an inward dive, and we're going to teach you, a reverse dive." And he taught me like six of the like dives you need to legally do to do a routine or a set or whatever it was called. And I wasn't particularly great at it, but there were more than one case where if the other team didn't have a diver or only had one diver, me doing it at all and being able to legally complete it just got us extra points for free.
Right.
And then on top of that, I still did swim. Like they wouldn't have just kept me on as a diver. Believe that was just
Right.
like the added fun bonus is like Eric learned how to do this over the weekend.
Oh yeah, I used to swim the 500 freestyle, and they would bring me to meets not because I could swim it particularly well, but
Because
because
no
quite
one else
often
wanted to
no
do
one
it,
else wanted to do it. Yep.
which is why I had to do the 200 and 400 IMs,
Ooh.
which
Oh no.
I hated.
Yeah, I did the 200 IM for a bit until I like blew out my shoulder on the butterfly.
Yeah, no, I have bad shoulders to this day but from doing butterfly.
Yep.
It's not kind to your body.
No. No, it really messes you up. Oh
But
my gosh.
it was fun. I enjoyed the hell out of it. I still have friends to this day that I swam with.
Mhm.
It was great. It's not a team sport in the sense that you're not passing a ball back and forth to one another. It's a very individual thing. It's like you versus a clock,
Mhm.
but it's still it was a very fun team.
It's one of my favorite team sports just because like all you have to do is you have to do something for 5 minutes and then you sit for like 2.5 hours. And then you go back and you do another thing for 5 minutes and then you sit for 2.5 hours. It's
Yeah,
great.
and most everyone else was doing a thing in much less than 5 minutes.
Yep.
Not doing that distance thing. That
Oh man, it was the worst. We had someone in the pool who once took, I think, 10 minutes to swim the 500 freestyle. Yeah. It's just not a pleasant. My dad, God love him, came to every single one of my meets, I think except for one maybe, and he was just committed to watching me swim distance in the pool. For those of you who don't know what a 500-yard freestyle is, a single indoor swimming pool is usually about 25 yards. So we're talking 20 laps of the pool. And like swimming isn't, my apologies to all swimmers, swimming is not an extremely exciting sport to watch at distance.
I have a potentially not funny for anyone else story, but being a fellow Eric, you might appreciate this. At the high school championship meet, my coach's handwriting was so bad that he wrote my name, and my name is spelled like yours, Eric, but he
Mhm.
wrote it so that the R basically connected with the I, and the C made a full circle.
Oh, good.
Now, if you're visualizing this, you're thinking, "Hey, that looks like Eno, ENO." Well, you want to know when my parents and my godparents showed up to this big championship meet, they had printed things with all the swimmers and what they're doing. And my name is Eno Buscemi in every single race I swam that day, which, yeah, that's a thing.
Oh man, good times. Ah man, I miss I think I miss some of the idea of swimming, but honestly, I don't miss just being wet all the time. Like you just kind of get used to being like all my clothes are damp, everything I own is just kind of
And the
damp.
most baffling, and I don't know if this is true in California or if you were in California when you swam, but in New
No.
York, swimming is a winter sport.
Oh yeah, I was in
And
West Virginia.
okay, so that's I'm imagining not much different than New York. It's cold. You
Very.
leave the pool and your hair freezes
Yep.
immediately when you go outside. Yeah, whoever decided that should be and not a spring sport. I don't know.
Oh, it was cruel. It was truly cruel. Ugh. Anyway, I was talking a little bit more about solo gaming earlier, and I did want your take. So I talked a little bit about the idea of solo games versus games that support solo play, and I wanted to know your thoughts on that, and if you have any favorite games in the solo gaming genre.
All right, well, for starters, like the solo thing, solo gaming, even solo gaming, that's a niche, right? Solo gaming is a niche, but
Mhm.
there is a ridiculous amount from like little 5 to 15 minute games to like 3 hour war simulation that are meant to be played solo. So I am much interested in does it play in like 20 minutes to 30
Yep.
minutes range, or you can get an hour to 75 minutes of my attention if it's something where I'm solving it like an escape room game,
Right.
which I also like to play solo because I'm an unbearable person to try and share things with if I'm trying to figure something out.
Yeah,
Like,
I
oh,
played a lot
I've
of
almost
exit
figured out
games
this
at
puzzle. Oh, let me
2.
look at it. Well, now I can't. What? No, no, I do those all by myself.
Oh yeah, I've played a lot of them at 2. I've been trying to play them remotely, and that's been really interesting. So what'll end up happening is like we'll have the spread, and I'll like take photos of everything, and I'll just be like, here you go. It's fun, but yeah, my favorite game for solo play is probably still Sprawlopolis.
I love Sprawlopolis because I could literally play it in 10 minutes. You know,
I once figured it was actually faster to show somebody a game of Sprawlopolis that
then
I think I spent 3 minutes playing it because I was basically just like card, card,
speed
card,
playing.
card, 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 card. Look, I won. And they're like, and then it would have been for me to explain it without having the cards as a visual reference.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am very excited for Interstates and very, very excited for Agropolis.
I have printed out the there I guess playtesters version of Agropolis. I've played Agropolis. It's very fun. I have also played Agropolis combined with Sprawlopolis.
Spragropolis? We need to, yeah. There's
Agra
like I feel like
Sprawl.
there's a bunch of ways that can come out that I don't love the way that it's pronounced, and we're just gonna have to like live with that.
But yeah, no, I love Swirlopolis. I will almost always play it with the 3 or 4 card beach expansion.
Hmm. I do like beaches.
That one just gives it that to me that's what an expansion should be. I don't care that it's only 3 or 4 card. It just adds one little thing to the game, and it was like, oh, that's one more decision that makes it that much more interesting.
Hmm.
Boom, thank
That's
you.
why I like Inns and Cathedrals for Carcassonne. I think that's my like all-time favorite expansion because I'm like, oh, Inns and Cathedrals, I just teach with the base game, and it's basically just +1 point or nothing.
Yeah,
It makes the game so much more interesting for me that I'm just like, yeah, Inns and Cathedrals every time.
but yeah, solo games. Another one of my favorites. Swirlopolis is a favorite of mine, but another one of my favorites is Nautilian, which
Hmm.
you everyone's familiar. Well, not, I
I've
don't know if
heard of it,
everyone is,
haven't played it.
but Onirim is the most famous one of that series by designer Shadi Torbay. Uh, there's other ones, Sylveon,
Hmm.
Arion. Nautilian is hands down my favorite. It's gone in and out of print because Z-Man is absolutely abysmal about keeping things in print. But if it's available, I highly, highly recommend that. Again, we're talking a 20-minute commitment if you're very thinky. I mean, again, you could probably play it in 3 minutes if you want to go the here's how I speed teach you method. But
True.
yeah, those are definitely two solo games. The thing, I think what makes a solo game a solo game and not like a solo compatible game is usually they're not high score chases.
Right. Right, and
So
that's what I was talking about earlier in the show as well, was that I feel kind of frustrated when I'm like, oh, like I love Railroad Inc. is the example that I gave, but with Railroad Inc., you kind of just do the game, you score your points, and then maybe next time you'll score higher, and that's fine.
now what I will say is like so Cascadia, which I'm still staring at, has a solo mode and it is a high score chase. But, if you go in knowing that 100 is a good score, at least you have a
Right.
benchmark. And also, since it plays identically to the base game, it's an amazing way to learn the game so that when you go to teach it at game night, you're not
Yes.
fumbling through the rules, even though there's only like 2 pages of rules.
Exactly.
But
Couldn't agree more.
any game where I can use the solo mode, and because there are games where the solo mode is like 110%, it happens to use some of the same components,
Mhm.
but also here's this extra deck of cards and these other components, and then
Right.
you're trying to sort out what when you're opening the game what even is for what,
Oh, I forgot about that. That's super
and then if it was
confusing.
kickstarted, nothing even looks like it does in the pictures because all the components were upgraded and now
Right.
they're not what they were, and then you just put the whole thing in the garbage and play something else.
Take that, fancy components that I spent extra money on.
And sometimes they're not even as nice as there are definitely games where I've just never used the fancier components.
Yeah.
Uh, Tavarua is one, and I enjoy Tavarua, but they have these silk screen wooden things that just aren't as nice as the cardboard chits the game came with.
That's how it
So
do sometimes.
yeah,
Like I like
it
the
is what it
flexibility,
is.
but I will definitely agree with you that there are games that I'm like, oh no, I'll just use the less nice thing. Or my favorite is I don't understand when something is the nicer or less nice version because they just look so different that I'm like, oh, I've got these two bags of things. Are they the same?
Yeah, and then you have to go to like update 37 where they clarify what they did with the stretch goal bonus because they had to go to a different manufacturer because the first one couldn't do the thing they wanted. So this is their compromise.
They still have the I think the maybe it was the 33rd update for Fireball Island bookmarked where the one where they explain how to put everything away. Because
Yeah,
like
I
every time I
watched a
play it, I'm
YouTube
just like,
video on that. Yep.
oh, I don't
Just
know
like
how
the
to do
bowl
this.
method, they
Yeah, the bold
actually.
method. Like
Yep.
when I look, I'm like, yes, this is perfectly logical. But what I really need is I just need to like be able to print out. I should just print out the update and just put it in the box. I think that might be my next step now that
That's
I once again own a printer.
there you go. There you
Uh,
go. I could 3D print how to.
That seems like a bad use of 3D print, but go
That
off.
that would be an absolutely useless use of everything. But this is when you've been stuck in quarantine for 6 months and
Yeah,
with only this as your new toy. When all you have is a
everything
hammer,
looks.
everything looks like a nail.
Yep. Oh man, good.
Oh, but yeah, so one more
Yeah,
solo
yeah.
gaming thing. So I'd mentioned I love escape room games, but I'm like basically almost out of them, not completely because there's always a few more. Just got one called Escape Alcatraz or something like
Mhm.
that. Break in Alcatraz? Did it break
I
into
think
the
it's the plot of the movie The Rock, but carry
Yeah,
on.
sure. It's in a weird hexagon box, but
Mhm.
it looks like a fun thing to try. But I've played all the exits and all the unlocks and all the deckscapes. But
What I always do is I go to the Exit family on BGG and I just refresh it every now and then I just keep like whispering at it, like the Cemetery of the Night
I'm
or
still
the one about the Otherworld portal.
I'm
Like,
just waiting for the kangaroo one. They're never gonna bring it in English,
I,
but
I at least I'm not 100% sure, but I think the Kangaroo one is like based on a German IP, and so that makes it hard for them to localize it because I assume it makes references to whatever the German IP that it's based off of is, and then also they have to get the rights for like English. It's sort of like I imagine.
yeah.
I'm speculating here mostly,
No,
but I
this
imagine
this
it's
that
similar
all
like
sounds completely
the
legit, but
Oink
I'm just a
Games modern
completionist.
art snarl. Like
Like I was
I
like,
love
oh,
Oink
I'm
Games.
gonna have to learn
I
enough
enjoy Oink Games.
German to play this kangaroo game in German.
That seems correct. Yes, that seems the right move.
But yeah,
Have you
so
played Exit: The Secret of the Premier?
yes, I have. I
Okay,
have done that one.
cool.
Now
And you,
I did that with my daughter. That was really cool because it was just like kind of like a how-to, so it was like
yeah,
perfect. We were done in 20 minutes, and she was like,
I'll
"Oh, this
love
was
that.
neat." That was a good one. But yeah, so escape room adjacent is there's this. I don't know. I don't want to say it's new because obviously Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective's been around for forever. But there's been a resurgence in like detective style deduction games.
Hmm.
Now, if you say deduction, most people instantly jump to like social deduction,
Right.
which I do not like at all.
No,
Like even a little bit. Like, oh, you
not
want to play
anymore.
that? No, 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 no. But actual deduction where it's like, oh, here's how this murder was committed, and like here's the clues, and like it's almost like one puzzle from an escape room game that you're just doing, also using, context clues of how murders work
Yeah,
more
that's
than
why I
just
brought up Planet
abstract
X.
numbers.
Deduction, support solo, about space. Three
There
things I
you go.
like. Yeah, because you've got like what? You've got Chronicles of Crime. You've got Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective.
And then
Um,
the actual game
oh
Detective,
yeah, the actual game
Detective, a
Detective.
modern crime board, which they subtitled because there was also the Detective City of Angels,
Oh
which is not,
yeah,
that's not a detecting, well, it is, but it's not this
I
type
did
of
think those
deduction.
were the same for a while. That
Oh,
was confusing.
and then you see the box art, and one of them's got like this noir detective, and one of them's got like this super blue highway scene. It's like, oh yeah, no, that's totally
Yeah,
not.
no, no, same game.
And
What
then the
game
one
are
I
you?
most recently played was called Deck Detective, which is by
Oh
the
yeah,
same
I heard about
folks,
those.
the same publisher, DV Gnocchi,
Yeah.
Giochi, I don't know, that did Deckscape.
Hmm.
So it's the whole thing with the
Oh, that
50,
makes sense.
the 50-ish giant cards, and it's just like one little murder. So definitely worth $10 to check out. Took like an hour, and then you could
Yeah,
pass it. You
that's
could
fair.
pass it on. You know, unlike the exits, nothing gets destroyed. So yeah,
Oh,
that's
that was the worst. First time I had to like cut up an exit game because like I'm the guy that like when I have to destroy a car in Pandemic Legacy, I just tuck it under the insert and I'm like, shh, you're safe now. Like with the exit games, I'm just like hand shaking as I bring up the scissors and I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this.
that never bothers me. I just didn't. I
Every
never
time.
understood how it was up for the German Game of the Year when you can only play it once. The
I
Spiel des
mean,
Jahres.
to
Because
be
like
fair, they are super fun.
and I love them, and I've done all of them, but the thing to me, like a game of the year is like this kind of like new classic that you'll break out forever and ever, like the Ticket to Rides and that style. So it's like, oh, like 10 years from now they'll be like, oh, they made 22 of them and then they ran out of ideas, and it's just like, oh, you never play it again
Yeah,
unless you have a really bad memory.
I think the way that I think about it is like for me the Exit series is like one game and like I think I would be fairly hard pressed, although I think my current I was just looking up stats the other day. It's not weird that I know this, but I think my current H index is like 31, so I've probably played 31 games 31 times.
Okay.
And so like I think once we hit the point where we're talking like 30 or 40 exit games, the exit games as a series will have moved up into my like most played game series, beating things out like Ticket to Ride, or I was going to say Dominion, but I'm 100% sure that's not true. I've played at least 40 or 50 games of Dominion as a series.
That's fair.
Yeah. That's at least my take, is that they were like, oh, we want to give it to Exit the series, like individual game. It's like,
Hey,
as
look,
far as the price point is good, 15
it's
bucks.
true.
It's cheaper than a movie out here, although again, who goes to the movies now? But yeah,
Yeah, no,
yeah,
you're not wrong. And like I said, I like them. I hope they make 40 of them. I hope they make more. I hope they can keep coming up with good ideas. It's always a mixed bag. Sometimes they're great and sometimes they're meh. But
yeah. I think there's always at least one puzzle that I'm like, no, I didn't like this puzzle, except for Catacomb of Horrors. I liked all of those.
yeah, I played Catacomb Horrors in the middle of the day. That was a mistake.
Mm. We played it in like a spooky room in our office. Very good.
There you go.
Cool, cool. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about other stuff you've been working on. So, you do a lot of work. I think I have my notes here that you're the de facto head of Punchboard Media. So,
Yeah, I do a lot of behind the scenes stuff
yeah,
there.
can you tell me a bit more about that for our audience and talk about maybe major areas of growth for the network or any unreasonable goals you'd like to achieve?
With Punchboard Media, I should know the answers to these questions, but so I'll say this: when we started Punchboard Media, it was like 4-ish years ago, maybe when the
Oh, it's been
idea.
4 years.
Well, I think yeah, it's probably been live for like three and a half. So I'm thinking
I'll
like, we thought it up and it started behind the scenes before it was a thing,
right.
and the idea then was that the the dice tower, the main, behemoth in our little corner of our hobby, was very homogeneously white male, and that was a big point of contention back, 4 years ago. And we one of the things we wanted to do was have a network that had more variety and different, not only video, that we had podcasts, and then we had written content, we had people that just did photos, and since then, and I don't know if in any small part Punchboard Media has anything to do with why they've become more diverse, but they have
Mhm.
over the last 4 years. And so, like, even by just existing, I think we've maybe pushed the bigger people in the hobby. And this could be absolutely just me having a big head about something that's not true. But it's a small enough hobby where I think they've definitely noticed we exist.
Mhm.
And
I think it's nice also to have a notion that there's a desire in the community for like more representation in the people that you like see from a media perspective, right? Like, I mean, for instance, Dice Tower is largely video, some podcasting, right? And Punchboard has a very solid amount of written content, which there aren't that many networks that focus on or have as a written content creator myself,
yeah,
much written representation. So we're talking like maybe a handful. So it's always nice to see that there's like ideas being paid to that as well. Like the written content has value.
yeah, and that's what it's all about. It's not just diversity about the people, or genders or sexuality or whatever. It's diversity in everything. Like and those are obviously important as well, and something that we've tried to do our best with. But
Mm-hmm.
it's also about different kinds of games, because they also, the main people at Dice Tower have their preferences, and
Right.
that's where they push people with their top 10 lists. And look, there's some great games there, and I'm not disparaging their taste at all. um, but there's so many different entry points into the hobby and so many
Mm-hmm.
different things. And if you can find one or two people that you connect with, then boom, you could be opened up to a whole bunch of stuff, be it wargaming, or be it, small box dexterity gaming,
Hmm.
or, party gaming, or, although again,
Absolutely.
not maybe these days, but
Yeah.
a lot of party games
Online
play
party
great online.
gaming.
Isn't that true, right? Like that's the one thing that's translated pretty well, is a lot of party games have translated
I've
online.
mostly
Like,
been playing Jackbox games online, but I
but
think there's a fair number. Like,
those are party game
um,
adjacent too.
yeah, just one can be played pretty easily online. There's a lot of scaffolding in place for other stuff like code names.
Yep.
I think there's some bootleggy-ish apps for a fake artist goes to New York, Spyfall, that sort of stuff. Yeah, I'd say
And I
party
mean,
games do a
like,
pretty good
they're
job of
they're
translating.
they're running Wavelength and Medium on Twitter.
Oh yeah. Oh
So,
yeah.
eh?
I do play Medium on Twitter pretty frequently. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
No.
fun too.
Yeah, I agree though. I think the idea of sort of more spotlights being shown on different areas of the hobby helps people find more voices that resonate with them. Even if then, like, you know, uh, you follow one creator on Twitter, they talk to another creator, you see their interactions, you're like, oh, I like this person a fair bit, and you sort of snake that pathway to finding more people that you want to like learn more from, regardless of their like network affiliation. Also happens a decent amount of the time.
Yeah.
It's nice to see sort of the cross pollination effects of a lot of this stuff happening.
Yeah, and I think it's good for us as content creators to have other people that know what we go through to try and make content, especially, and both of us have full-time jobs. And there are people in the Punchboard Media Network like Paul Grogan that do this for a
Mhm.
living,
Right.
and God bless him. But
Mhm.
this is not my job. This is just something I do, for fun, because I enjoy games. I enjoy talking about games, and I know obviously not your career either. So sometimes, there's stresses to, oh, this publisher is yelling at me because, I got this game, and they wanted it reviewed in 2 weeks, and I want to be able to play it with 4 people before I can feel like I give it a full review, but I can't get 4 people together because we're in the middle of a pandemic. Why does no one understand this? And like,
Yep.
and if I say that on the Punchboard Media Slack, everyone goes, yeah, of course. And you're speaking to people that are going to understand or like, oh, I emailed this publisher, and we had this great relationship, and then I gave the one game a meh review, and now they won't respond to my emails. It's like, clearly that's not related, except it totally is, and like, grow some thicker skin.
Oh man. Yeah, thankfully I have not had that experience, but yeah.
Yeah,
Woof.
that's not actually a me story. I'm not gonna name. Your secret is safe with me, fellow PBM creator.
Oh man. Yeah, no, I think it's good, but it also means that people end up wearing a fair bit of hats as we sort of start diversifying our content, trying new stuff. I mean, I'm doing
Yeah,
video
here
now.
here we both are on a video,
Ugh, what a wild
show.
ride.
Yeah.
Me swearing I'm never gonna do video because I'm bad at it. And you know what? I still am bad at it.
And
So
and I did the same thing on for the Punchboard Parade that Chris Renshaw
right.
started, and he's like, oh, and I was just, so I just slapped my phone up and just, ranted for a few minutes, and it's not it's not my finest work, because, and you'll appreciate it, as a writer, you can write, and then you could go back and edit, and then you could go back and change the order you said things, and then you could change that one word that just wasn't quite what you meant, and then you can look at it and read it over and go, all right, that's good. And someone may read it and be like, oh, that was only 1,000 words. How long could that have possibly taken? And you're like, that took me a week and a half. Or that's
Oh
me.
yeah.
You have to be a faster writer than me, just by sheer output that you put out. But that's me. That's my
It might
process. I'm
not be that
also
I'm
a
a faster
perfectionist.
at writer as much as I am a probably worse editor. So I
Yes, I
definitely
am. I am an
feel that
editor for my day job, so that I
fair.
can't. I can't escape it.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely got a note on one of my reviews where someone was like, "Hey, you just didn't finish this paragraph," and I'm like, "Oh,"
Huh.
and so I went back and finished it. it's a, it's a very loosey goosey format. Okay, so if we're talking about content expansion though. So you do wear a few different content hats between the variety of work that you're doing. So I am interested. So what determines whether something ends up on the cardboard hoard, in one of your quick hits, on Patrick and Eric in the morning, or in whatever you're talking about for Punchboard Parade?
Well, the the cardboard hoard is like the big bucket for my written content, and I have that broken out roughly into reviews, previews. Now sometimes that gets blurry, but I
The
cascade.
distinction between reviews and previews? Ah, we don't have time for that. Moving on.
No, like I'm gonna do a full review on Cascadia because I'm confident that it's close enough to the finished product, and I've had the experience to play it enough times that I feel like I can give it a full review. Whereas a preview is like maybe I played it once or twice, and I'm like, I have thoughts on it, but I want to clarify that these thoughts are not based on extensive plays at multiple player counts.
Right.
Especially now, sometimes I'm testing stuff on like the guys from level 99 showed me Bullet
Oh
on
yeah.
Tabletop Simulator, and I loved the hell out of that game. But I'm like,
It's super cool. I
it
wish I'd
it
been able to try
is,
it.
but I didn't feel comfortable giving it a full review, having only played it on Tabletop Simulator with
Yeah.
not with wonky digital components. So
Yeah, someone was describing Tabletop Simulator to me as like you're playing a board game, but you can only use like those grabber hands to move
see,
pieces around. I'm
and
like,
I
yeah, that's
heard
kind
you're playing a board game with boxing gloves, which is very similar
of yeah.
in end result.
Yeah, it's like it's pretty good for what it is, but I still have a lot of questions about the need to have like a realistic physics engine. But that's okay.
Well, yeah, there's that. But yeah, so and then quick hits is like, I have one interesting thought about this. And I don't want to write a full review on this, just to share my one interesting thought about this.
Hmm.
So and then I'll put a few of them together. The one I'm working on now is like a few games where I just have like one gripe with them. And one of them is the what is that game? Cities Skylines, the board game.
Oh yeah, the one that says it takes 40 minutes.
That's not well. Maybe I have more than one gripe, but my main gripe
Eric,
is
I
they
have
get
one gripe. Means something. Eric, I have two gripes.
they give you this intro scenario to teach you how to play, and then they make it incredibly difficult.
Oh, that game is
Like
unbelievably hard.
who thought like, oh, your first game, you should get repeatedly hammered in the nuts when you play? To the point where I was like, I must have played wrong because here's this chart that says, oh, 0 to 10 means my city was horrible, 10 to 20, and then it goes up to like 70 plus is a great city, and I scored -30.
Yeah, that's about right. So
And I'm like,
apparently,
I'm
I was
not
talking
on
to
the chart.
Netters over at Netters Plays, and apparently she's been crushing it. She's like really good at it. She's like, oh yeah, I just did these things, and I'm like, what?
Certainly wasn't what I was doing, but
Yeah, no, I
yeah,
was
that was my thing as
terrible.
a first play. Getting someone to do so poorly that they never want to play it again is probably not a good long-term plan on.
I have a lot of thoughts about it, mostly because I'm like, oh, it's a really interesting game. I love the Polyaminos stuff. I love basically everything about the game, but it is wildly difficult.
Yeah, and I like to play games to feel smart, not to feel like an idiot.
Yep, yep,
So,
yep.
yeah, any game that makes me feel like, oh man, I didn't even make it onto the chart that's supposed to give me my high score is, yeah, that's a thing.
Yeah, it's definitely hurtful. I'm like,
So yeah,
oh,
those
quick
are the
hits
quick
maybe.
hits, and like I said, and I try and like one week I just did 3 Knizia games just because I had recently played a few, and I was like, I have a few thoughts, but not enough to do, you know, a full thing on that. So they just become quick hits, and they're just a quick paragraph. Those I write up quick. Then I also do interview stuff, but I usually do that right through PBM because the focus there is on the person, not
Right.
on me or my brand. I don't need to. And Patrick in the morning is just me and Patrick BSing like we're BSing now. And honestly, we're shocked anyone listens, but we just do it to catch up and keep in touch because we don't live close with him living in Ohio and me, being here in New York. So, and we don't like a lot of podcasts are like they have this format. They have a little banter. They talk about upcoming stuff. Then they had like a review. And then like that's it. But we don't do that at all. Like we never wanted to be like a review of a game format show. So we just pick a totally random topic and super like loosely outline it. Like we're talking like cocktail napkin outline. Like, oh, we're going to talk about this random topic, and we'll sketch out a rough idea, and then we'll just BS about it.
Yeah, you mean you don't prepare 2 or 3 pages of show notes?
No. Two or three paragraphs between the two of us, possibly. But the thing is neither one of us is looking to monetize. Like I said, I have a full-time job, and this is just fun for me. If I needed to enter the stream like where I was like entering the hustle, and that would be totally different. And I really hope I never work in this industry. I
think that's fair. I have monetization ideas for this show, and they're all terrible. And I truly hope someone will give me money to craft some of the terrible ideas. So like one I've been floating around is commercial breaks in between some of the segments.
Okay.
But I get to decide everything that's said about whatever the commercial is. So like just basically like here's some money, put your game in this commercial, but you have no oversight as to what I'm going to say.
So they get to put a picture of their game up for 30 seconds, and then you get to ad lib what the advertisement is.
Oh, not even that. If I have a copy of the game, then I'll be like, Dominion, it goes terrible with Coke, and then just dump a Coke into it and be like, advertising, we did it. Like if there's one thing I truly don't understand, it's marketing, as has been made clear by pretty much every endeavor that I've taken in this industry. Woo. And I'm just trying to figure out ways we can make it worse.
You know what? That actually might get a lot of attention.
You mean like
I mean not positive attention necessarily, but
yeah. Oh man. Gosh. Okay, yeah. So speaking of day jobs though, so you talked a fair bit about being an editor as your day job.
Yeah.
And how much do you feel like that informs the writing that you're doing for board gaming?
I write about the financial markets. Yeah, no. and the less we talk about that, the better. But what the thing about it is, I have to stick to the facts when I write about that. I'm not hired to write opinion pieces. I'm just reporting the facts to people that are then buying and selling the stocks. So I've kind of taken that attitude because it's just been so ingrained. I've been doing this for 15 years that I've taken that attitude to my reviewing, like just the facts kind of approach. And I do put some opinions in there, but it's usually based on like I think I give more background on some games than other, and more comparisons to other things that they compare to, or little histories on what I'm doing than more how does this make me feel?
Certainly more than me, given that my treatment of game background is I found this game in a field, or rather, I was in a field and the publisher threw the board game and hit me in the head with it, and I said, sure, why not?
But that just to me is what's the history of something. Like where did the designer come from that he got to this point or she got to this point? What other games had these mechanisms that this looked like it built on? That sort of thing. And then, was the theme changed midway because the publisher felt different? And there's some interesting threads to pull out there. But I know, and what happens online all the time is people are like, oh, I don't want to see any of this. I just write 2 sentences like, should I spend my money on it? Like, did you love it? And should I buy it? And I'm like, not. You want an advertisement then, or you want me to say I hate it so I could save you money? But I wouldn't bother writing 1,000 to 1,500 words about something if I hated it. I don't have time for that.
Right.
Sorry, not sorry. Again, if I was getting paid to do this. If this was my job, I would review every game that was put in front of me. But I'm not going to play a game I don't like in my spare time 4 or 5 times so that I could then trash it online. I don't even care if that would get me hits. I don't care about hits. I write because I enjoy the act of writing.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
that's my
I'm personally
rant
very
about
much of
that.
the opinion as a reviewer that I am actually probably the worst person to ask, should I buy this? Because I didn't. Like,
And
if I
and oftentimes that is true as well. And to, to me, it's just like if you've looked at my content in the past, you should probably have an idea what kind of stuff I like. And if you like the other stuff that I said I liked, and then I said I like this, like you should have a gauge on that.
right, that's kind of where I'm at as well. Like, if people are like, Eric, what game should I buy? I'm basically like Kramer from Mad Money, just slamming my hand on the table, being like, Oink games. Because like, typically speaking, in a given year, the publisher that I buy from most often is Oink by a like country mile.
And Button Shy too. I know they sneak in there.
I do love Button Shy, but I tend to preview most of their stuff, so
Oh,
I'm
that's
not
fair.
often. Actually, it means that I have a lot of unsleeved, unwalleted Button Shy games. So I have like a baggie with Hierarchy and a baggie with Handsome, and I'm like,
Yep.
I'm gonna lose these at some point. They thankfully sent me a wallet for Food Chain Islands, so I've got that one locked down. But
Speaking of solo games, I love that one.
that one I had a lot of fun with.
I
I'm
absolutely
not
love
very
that one. It
good at it.
reminded me of that peg game at the Cracker
Oh
Barrel.
yeah, that's okay. That's what it is. I knew it reminded me of
It was
something.
that with superpowers, where all the
Mhm.
pegs have superpowers.
Have you
Yeah.
tried Flash 8, the Scorpion Masquerade game?
Yes, I have. That was one of the last games I played in the before times at
Because
PAX
it does
Unplugged.
it's
It's
the other
slide
Cracker
puzzle,
Barrel
yeah.
game. Yeah.
I am not very adept at that one.
I'm
I
just
was going around in the
fast.
same square like over and over again, wondering why it was never going to make that pattern. And at some
Yeah.
point, I'm like, "You definition of
That's
insanity."
that's my major skill in Flash 8. It's not that I am good, I am just very fast. So I'm just like, ooh, like I just keep
You're
shuffling the board.
cycling until something matches.
Yeah, essentially. I don't know how much computer science background you have, but
I
when we're
was an
talking
undergrad in computer science, so
perfect then. Are you familiar with Bogo Sort?
not by that
Okay.
name, but
Well,
it's
for the
been
people who
20
aren't familiar with
years.
Bogosort, Bogosort is a sorting algorithm similar to quicksort, merge sort, any sorting algorithm that takes a group of unsorted objects and outputs a sorted version. Bogosort is a particularly interesting one where what you do is to Bogosort a deck of cards, you would throw the deck of cards up in the air, wait for all the cards to fall down, gather them back up in the deck, and then say, is the deck sorted? No? Then do it again. And that's kind of how I play Flash 8, is I'm just sort of like, let me randomize my setup. Does it match anything? Nope. Then we go again.
That is very interesting, and that sounds like the world's worst way to sort a deck of cards. This is a more of like an intellectual exercise and not the way anyone actually
Yeah. Yeah,
sorts anything.
I think it's the second worst, but I think that's because the first worst is a variant of that,
Where
where
you
if
throw
you,
everything in the garbage.
well, no, if you check and it's not sorted, you destroy the universe.
There you
Computer
go.
scientists, on the whole, very weird.
I'm gonna date myself for you and just tell you the first language I learned to program in was Pascal.
Ooh, that's a fun one. Mine
A
was
long,
C, but then
long
I kind of
time ago.
repressed C, and then I mostly stick to Python these days.
Oh,
Yeah,
with
but we
those
could talk
pythons.
all night about computer science languages.
But I don't think anyone else wants to hear that.
Oh gosh, no, but thank you so much for coming on the show.
It was my absolute pleasure. It is
Yeah, it's a
always
blast
nice
having
to
you.
talk to you, and these days it is nice to talk to anyone.
I am super happy to be on the anyone list. Why don't you tell everyone listening where they can find you?
um, Eric Buscemi at Eric Buscemi on Twitter, and my written content and my podcast can be found on the Punchboard Media website, which is www.punchboardmedia.com. That's pretty much that.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Eric. It was a blast having you. Look forward to chatting again.
I cannot wait. Thanks again for having me.
Yeah, no problem. See you soon.
Well, that's all the time we have for you tonight. Looking forward to seeing you next time on Late Night Table Talk.